Our story begins with a soul reborn as a bull, whose first order of business is devouring 200 pounds of hay to become the strongest beast in the pen. The surrounding calves all think he's lost his mind, knowing that the stronger a bull grows, the more likely he is to be sent off for backbreaking labor. To them, a life of toil is worse than death, but they don't know that he has awakened a devouring evolution system. As long as he eats, he can grow stronger, and while hay offers slow progress, it is, at the very least, a safe way to start. He expected to reach 3,000 pounds and evolve in peace, but the sudden appearance of two humans is about to disrupt his entire plan. A little girl tugged at the large man's hand, pleading with him not to kill Xiaohei because he was a good dog. She continues to beg with tear-filled eyes glancing his way, yet the man's expression remains entirely unmoved. To be honest, he has a business to run. Duo, isn't beef delicious? He asks. It is, but the little girl starts to say, before being interrupted. The man pats her head and tells her not to worry. He won't kill the bull himself because the meat market has already placed an order. He plans to sell the animal once the new year approaches, and suddenly, the hay in our protagonist's mouth doesn't taste quite so good anymore. Fortunately, the new year is still far off, and he tells himself that if he can evolve before then, he will surely find a way to escape this farm. Over the next 2 months, he frantically accelerates his eating, stuffing everything from dry stalks to coarse bean dregs into his mouth without hesitation. However, the results are far from ideal. His status shows he is still a common domestic bull, currently weighing 800 pounds. With a constitution of 15 and strength at 20, his attributes aren't rising much because he is stuck eating such low-energy food. While he has become a giant compared to the other cattle, he knows deep down that he is still nowhere near strong enough to confront humans. Just as these thoughts cross his mind, the burly man returns to the pen, accompanied by several other men. It seems the time has come. Seeing how much the bull has grown, the man's eyes light up with greed. Brothers, give me a hand loading this big black bull onto the truck. He promises to treat them to a fine meal afterward, and despite a desperate struggle, the bull is dragged out of the farm by his horns. Looking at the large truck with its reinforced iron cage, his heart sinks. A normal truck might have offered a chance to overturn and escape. But a cage like this shatters his hopes entirely, or so it seems, until he realizes that his journey is only just beginning. As he was being loaded into the truck, he noticed that the iron cage wasn't actually locked, but merely secured with a simple metal pin. This was undoubtedly his last hope for survival. As the truck started and the body began to jolt violently, he kept his eyes fixed on that pin. If he could just knock it loose, he would be free. However, the burly man was sitting right there in the cab, checking the rearview mirror constantly. He didn't dare make a move yet, but as the truck hit the mountain roads and the shaking intensified, he saw his chance while the driver was distracted. Quietly, he used his horns to press against the pin, pushing it out bit by bit. Yet, just as the metal was about to slide free, the man suddenly slammed on the brakes. Through the gaps in the cage, we see the reason for this abrupt stop. A van was blocking the middle of the road. 3 lean men stepped out, led by a man with a cigarette and a prominent scar across his face. Boss Lee, it's been a long time, the scarred man said, walking up to the driver's side with a sinister grin. Boss Lee's expression shifted instantly. Lao Dao, what do you want? Nothing much, the man replied. I just heard you raised a fine bull. Lao Dao began walking toward the back of the truck to take a look. Our protagonist immediately dropped down, pretending to be a docile animal. The man clicked his tongue in admiration. TSK, this bull is sturdy, must weigh at least 800 pounds. Lao Dao patted the iron cage, his eyes gleaming with greed. Boss Lee quickly jumped out of the cab to intervene. Lao Dao, I've already sold this bull to the meat market. Don't go getting any ideas. Selling to the market? What a waste, the other replied. Lao Dao crushed his cigarette and whispered something into Boss Lee's ear. We see Lee's face grow increasingly grim as he listens. Finally, Lee gritted his teeth and agreed, provided the price was right. Deep down, our bull felt a sinking realization. These two humans were bartering over his life right in front of him. But then, Lao Dao noticed something and pointed at the latch. Boss Lee, why isn't this cage locked? Before the man could even respond, our protagonist gathered every ounce of his strength. He slammed into the pin with a heavy thud. With a sharp crack, the metal snapped, and the cage door swung wide open. He charged out of the cage and leapt straight off the truck. Behind him, he heard Lao Dao's furious roar as the bull made his break. He didn't look back, disappearing into the dense forest as the shouts and curses of the two men faded into the distance. Quick, catch it. That bull cost me 30,000. Lao Dao's voice draws closer as our protagonist pushes his 4 legs to their absolute limit. Branches scratch against his hide with a stinging heat, and before long, he feels his physical strength beginning to fail him. It seems 2 months of eating nothing but fodder hadn't provided nearly enough energy, and just as he is about to collapse, the thick, metallic scent of blood wafts from up ahead. Following the trail, he discovers the carcass of a wild boar. It lies there in the thicket, recently deceased. Panting heavily, he stares at the body while his mind races through the possibilities. The system told him that eating would make him stronger, but it never explicitly said he was restricted to a vegetarian diet. With the footsteps behind him growing louder, there is no time for hesitation. It is a desperate gamble, but he lowers his head and bites. He tears away a large chunk of the boar's flesh and forces it into his mouth, the taste of blood instantly filling his senses. Suppressing his natural disgust, he swallows. A second later, the system's notifications begin to chime frantically in his mind. By consuming the wild boar, he has gained 50 energy points, 5 points of constitution, 8 of strength, and 100 pounds in weight. He is stunned. A single bite of meat is more effective than a month of grazing. Without a second thought, he returns to his meal. He gulps down the meat greedily, and with every swallow, a surge of burning power rushes through him as his muscles begin to expand. Over there, Lao Dao's voice explodes from behind. He spins around to see 3 men brandishing shotguns, charging toward him. Bosley follows behind them, his face pale as he shouts, "Lao Dao, don't shoot. You'll ruin the value of the meat. To hell with the money. If this beast escapes, I'm out 30,000. Lao Dao snarls, raising his weapon. As the dark barrel of the gun levels with his head, our bull quickly grabs the remaining half of the boar and bolts. A shot rings out, the bullet grazing his hind leg and kicking up a spray of dirt, which only serves to make him run faster. He keeps a death grip on the carcass. This is his capital for survival, and he refuses to let it go. To be honest, he's never been more motivated. After another 10 minutes of running, he finally loses Lao Dao and the others, ducking into a cave to catch his breath. The system chimes once more. His weight has reached 900 pounds, with his constitution at 32 and strength at 45. The system detects that the host is continuously consuming high-energy flesh, and a mutation reaction begins. He looks down at himself in surprise. He takes a long, hard look at his own body, which is no longer that of a simple farm animal. His muscle lines are now clearly defined. He tries pawing at the ground, and to his shock, the hard stone is easily crushed beneath his hooves. This strength is more than double what it was before. Excited by the progress, he continues to feast on the remains of the wild boar. Soon, he has devoured every last scrap. The system chimes. Having consumed the entire boar, his weight has now surpassed 1,000 pounds. His strength breaks 50 points, and the mutation accelerates, increasing his skin's hardening by 30%. He feels a surge of vitality. The previous weakness has vanished entirely. However, just then, the sound of barking echoes from outside the cave. It seems the peace is over. His heart sinks. Lao Dao has actually brought hunting dogs to track him down. Sure enough, it isn't long before 3 fierce hounds appear. They charge into the cave, baring their teeth. The lead hound is massive, over a meter tall, with eyes gleaming with a predatory light. Lao Dao's voice rings out from outside as the 3 hounds spring forward simultaneously, aiming for our protagonist's throat. Their sharp fangs are inches from his neck, but this time, he doesn't run. He lets out a low growl and violently raises his front hooves. He delivers a brutal kick directly into the lead hound, sending it reeling back with a sickening thud. Adrenaline takes over as he charges, using his horns to gore the second hound through the belly. The third dog, terrified, turns to flee. But it isn't fast enough. He brings a hoof down, snapping its spine instantly. Outside, Lao Dao's voice trembles with pure terror. Is that thing even a bull? Lao Dao screams for his men to run. Looking at the 3 carcasses on the ground, a wild, desperate thought enters our bull's mind. If eating a wild boar made him stronger, what would eating these hounds do? He lowers his head and bites into the largest of the dogs. He tears away a massive chunk of flesh and swallows it. The system confirms. Consuming the mutated hound grants him 80 energy points. His strength rises by 12, constitution by 10, and agility by 5. His eyes light up. The energy in these dogs is even higher than the boar. He picks up the pace, frantically devouring the remains of the 3 hounds until nothing is left. To be honest, he's losing his taste for grass. His weight reaches 1,200 pounds, with strength at 78 and agility at 30. The system continues to monitor his evolving constitution. The system announces he has reached the mutation threshold, and a deep transformation begins. Suddenly, his skin starts to burn with an agonizing intensity. It feels as if countless ants are devouring him from the inside. He rolls on the ground in pain, yet he grinds his teeth, refusing to make a sound. After about 10 minutes, the searing heat finally recedes. He struggles back to his feet and looks down at his own body to see what has changed. Our bull is absolutely stunned by what he sees. A layer of black, bony keratin has grown over his skin, a natural armor of sorts. It feels incredibly hard to the touch, like he's wearing a suit of mail. Moreover, 7 or 8 sharp bone spikes have sprouted along his spine. Each spike is nearly the size of a hand, gleaming coldly in the dim cave. He shakes his head and notices his horns have also grown much thicker. The tips are now as sharp as twin blades. While he is still processing this shock, Lao Dao's voice suddenly echoes from outside the cave. Lao Dao asks Boss Li if he's certain the beast is inside. Li replies that he saw him enter with his own eyes, so there's no escape. The big man's voice is trembling. He is clearly still shaken by the earlier carnage. Lao Dao growls that the beast won't be shown any mercy. That creature killed 3 of his best hounds, and today, it must die. As Lao Dao finishes speaking, we hear a suspicious rustling sound. It sounds like they are preparing something. Our protagonist stares warily at the entrance, his new muscles tensed and ready for a fight. However, a second later, an object trailing sparks is tossed inside. It's explosives. His pupils shrink as he immediately bolts deeper into the cave. With a deafening roar, the entire cavern shakes violently. Rocks rain down like hail, and the sheer force of the blast knocks him off his feet. Several sharp stones strike his back, but to his surprise, he feels only a dull ache. That layer of bony armor actually absorbed most of the impact. He struggles to his feet and realizes the cave entrance has been half buried by the explosion. It seems his enemies are quite thorough. Lao Dao's voice drifts in from the outside, asking if the thing is dead. The big man replies that it must be, given the power of the blast. He claims even a bear would be finished after that. The man sounds relieved, but he has no idea who or what he is dealing with. Listening to their conversation, a murderous glint flashes in the bull's eyes. They want him dead? They can keep dreaming. He lets out a low growl and charges the collapsed entrance. Neither rock nor dirt can stop him now as he forcefully smashes through the debris. The sudden sunlight stings his eyes. By the time he clears his vision, Lao Dao and the big man have turned pale with absolute terror. What kind of monster is this? Lao Dao stammers, his hands trembling so violently that he can barely hold his shotgun. The big man simply collapses, a dark stain spreading across his trousers. Our bull shakes the dust from his head, looking quite formidable. He begins to walk toward them, step by step. Lao Dao finally snaps out of his trance and opens fire with his shotgun. 3 shots hit the armor directly, yet they only produce a few sparks. Not a single scratch is left on his skin. Lao Dao panics completely, throwing his gun aside and turning to flee. The big man screams for him not to leave him behind. He tries to follow, but his legs give out from fear and he tumbles to the ground. Our protagonist stands over him now. He looks down at the man who raised him for 2 months. Though it was only for profit, at least he wasn't cruel. After staring for a few seconds, he turns away to chase Lao Dao instead. That scoundrel tried to kill him, after all. With all 4 limbs powering him, his speed is incredible. In just a few breaths, he has already caught up to Lao Dao. Lao Dao is scared out of his wits. He loses his footing and goes tumbling down the steep hillside. Our bull watches from the top as Lao Dao struggles and wails in the thorns. Suddenly, the system's voice chimes in. He has earned the achievement, breaking the shackles, for his first counterkill. His mutation has stabilized, and he has officially evolved. He is now an armored savage bull. A new mission appears. Venture into the wilderness and devour stronger creatures to reach 2,000 pounds. He looks toward the distant, misty mountains with a flicker of excitement. There is no going back to the human world now. If he is to survive, he must eat his way to the top. He turns from the slope and heads into the forest. The big man's distant shouts echo behind him, but he no longer cares. The system chimes again to confirm his current status. He is officially recognized as an armored savage bull, a creature built for power and endurance. To continue his growth, he must seek out prey with higher energy levels. He flicks his tail and quickens his pace. If he wants to become truly powerful, he needs to find more dangerous targets. After walking for an hour, the trees grow denser and the sunlight barely reaches the forest floor. We are deep in the wild now. The air here is thick and heavy, smelling of damp decay, with animal droppings and remains scattered everywhere. Our bull alertly pricks up his ears. This place is clearly the territory of some large, fierce predator. And just then, the bushes directly ahead begin to shake violently. He stops in his tracks, his muscles tensing as a massive wild boar suddenly bursts out from the thicket. Its tusks are a foot long, and its eyes burn a blood red. This boar is significantly larger than the one he ate previously. At least 400 or 500 pounds larger. In fact, upon seeing him, the boar lets out an angry roar. It paws at the ground and charges. Instead of retreating, he meets the challenge head-on, and the 2 great beasts collide with a dull thud. The boar's tusks scrape against his armor, but they only manage to leave 2 faint white marks behind. Seizing the opening, he lowers his head and drives his horns deep into the boar, which lets out a piercing scream of agony. It tries to scramble up, but he crushes its neck with a single heavy hoof. The system chimes. Large wild boar slain, 120 high energy points earned. He begins to devour the carcass without hesitation. As the warm flesh enters his mouth, that familiar burning sensation surges through his body once more. The system updates. Weight increased by 150 pounds, strength up by 15 points, and constitution up by 12 points. His current weight is 1,350 pounds, leaving 650 more to go before his next evolution. But as he eats, a strange giggling sound echoes around him. He snaps his head up and realizes he has been surrounded by 7 or 8 pairs of glowing green eyes. It's a wolf pack. The alpha is exceptionally large with grayish-black fur, a vicious gaze, and saliva dripping from its jaws. The other wolves fan out, slowly closing the circle. He swallows the last of his meat and lets out a low growl, assuming a fighting stance. The pack clearly views him as an intruder who has stolen their hard-earned prize. To be honest, they don't look like they want to share. The alpha howls, and the others instantly pounce from all directions. He spins around violently to defend himself. He delivers a powerful kick to a wolf lunging for his hind legs. Another wolf bites his neck, only to have its teeth shatter against his armor. The wolf yelps and lets go, allowing him to toss it into the air with his horns and slam it onto the ground. However, the pack's coordination is flawless. As soon as one wolf is repelled, another immediately takes its place. His stamina begins to drain, and his breathing grows heavy. His breathing grows ragged, and just then, the alpha wolf suddenly lunges from the side, its sharp claws aimed directly for our bull's eyes. He has no time to dodge, and can only tilt his head to block with his horns. The alpha's claws rake across his cheek, tearing open a deep gash. Blood begins to pour from the wound, and he lets out a roar of pain. He is thoroughly enraged now. To be honest, he's done playing games with this pack. It's a fight to the death now. He exerts a sudden burst of power, lunging forward to strike the alpha with the sharp bone spikes along his spine. The alpha reacts with incredible speed, flipping in midair to escape. However, the wolf directly behind him isn't quite so lucky. The bone spikes pierce straight through the unlucky wolf's body, killing it instantly. Seeing their companion's brutal end, the other wolves feel a flicker of fear. Their offensive visibly weakens. Seizing the moment, he charges the nearest wolf and crushes its skull under a heavy hoof. Realizing the tide has turned, the alpha lets out a long howl and leads the remaining pack in a swift retreat. He stands his ground, panting heavily. He is covered in blood, and it's hard to tell what is his and what belongs to the wolves. The system chimes. 3 wolves slain, 180 high energy points earned. The system detects his injuries and suggests immediate consumption of flesh to recover. He looks at the 2 wolf carcasses and the unfinished boar. Without a moment's hesitation, he begins to feast. As the meat goes down, a sharp, stinging itch begins to spread across his wounds. It's the sensation of rapid healing. His body begins to knit itself back together as he continues his grim meal. We see the bone spikes on his back actually increasing in length. It seems the more he eats, the more formidable his natural weaponry becomes. He feels power surging back into his limbs, and his earlier exhaustion vanishes. However, just as he finishes, more wolf howls echo from the distance. The number of voices has more than doubled. His heart sinks as he realizes these beasts have actually gone to call for reinforcements. He knows he can't stay here much longer. He needs to find a safe place. He grabs the remaining half of the boar in his jaws. He turns and bolts into the depths of the dense forest. Behind him, the howls are drawing closer. This time, they are truly out for blood. Clutching the boar carcass, he runs desperately. The howling follows him like a shadow, never falling behind for even a second. Through the gaps in the trees, we see at least a dozen wolves in pursuit, led by the same alpha. That beast is certainly persistent. He gallops with all his might, branches scraping his sides, and his armor clattering loudly. Yet, the pack's speed is simply too much to outrun. The wolves are faster, and the gap is closing rapidly. Just as they are about to overtake him, an open clearing suddenly appears ahead. He bursts out of the woods and finds himself in a rocky wasteland, where massive boulders are scattered across the terrain. A small stream cuts through the center. Without a second thought, he charges into the rocks with the pack hot on his heels. Over a dozen wolves surround him from all sides, completely cutting off his retreat. The alpha stands atop a giant stone, looking down. The beast stares at him with eyes full of pure killing intent. It lets out a long howl, and the pack immediately launches their assault. They've grown smarter now, abandoning solo attacks to coordinate in small groups. 3 wolves leap at his left side simultaneously. As he turns to face them, 2 more wolves sink their teeth into his hind legs. He kicks out in pain to shake them off. But the distraction allows a wolf in front to tackle him to the ground. 4 or 5 wolves instantly pile on, their claws tearing at him. His armor is tough, but it can't withstand so many simultaneous strikes and begins to crack. To be honest, things are looking grim. He struggles frantically, using the bone spikes on his back to impale one of the wolves, pinning him down. As the pack recoils, he moves. He scrambles to his feet and charges the nearest wolf, driving his horns deep into its chest. With a violent heave, he tosses it aside. The wolf slams against the rocks, but before he can even catch his breath, the alpha leaps down from its perch to strike. It aims straight for his throat. He swerves, but the alpha's claws leave 3 bloody gashes across his face. He lets out a furious roar. He spins and delivers a powerful kick with his hind legs, but the alpha flips mid-air and lands with terrifying agility. The other wolves seize the opening to swarm him again. His stamina is draining fast as one wolf bites into his front leg. Another lunges for his eyes. He shakes his head violently, his horns slicing open the attacker's belly until its entrails spill onto the ground. However, the wolf on his front leg refuses to let go, its fangs piercing through the armor and deep into his flesh. Driven mad by the pain, he hoists his leg high and slams it down against the earth. The wolf's skull shatters instantly. The system chimes. Wild wolf slain, 60 high energy points earned. It warns him of his severe injuries and suggests immediate nourishment. Panting heavily, he looks at the 3 fresh carcasses and begins to tear into the warm meat without a moment's hesitation. As the meat enters his mouth, a familiar itching sensation returns to his wounds. Seeing him feast on their kin right before their eyes, the pack's gaze flickers with fear and rage. The alpha lets out another long howl, and the remaining wolves charge frantically. This time, they are truly desperate, throwing themselves into the fray with total abandon. Completely ignoring their own safety, 7 or 8 wolves tackle him at once. Their sharp claws and fangs tear at him in a frenzied assault. His armor finally hits its limit and begins to shatter in large chunks. Blood wells up from the cracks, and he can feel his consciousness starting to fade. His body grows heavier by the second. He wonders if this is where his journey ends. But just then, the system's notification chime suddenly rings out. It detects that the host is in critical condition and activates an emergency purification mode, forcibly burning all internal energy to trigger a berserk state. In the next second, his blood feels as though it is boiling. An unprecedented surge of power erupts from deep within his body. He lets out a heaven-shaking roar and lunges to his feet. Every wolf that was pinning him down is sent flying through the air. His eyes turn a deep, blood-red hue. The bone spikes on his back grow wildly, extending from half a foot to over a foot in length. The cracks in his armor begin to heal, becoming even thicker and heavier with a cold, metallic luster. To be honest, he looks more monster than beast now. He charges the nearest wolf, crushing its skull instantly with a single heavy stomp. Another wolf lunges at him from the side. He catches it on his horns, hoisting it high before slamming it against the rocks, killing it instantly. He has become a whirlwind of destruction. Like a demonic beast that has lost all reason, he leaves a trail of fallen wolves in his wake. However, the alpha suddenly lets out a piercing, shrill cry. The sound is agonizing to the ears. Immediately after, the alpha's body begins to swell as the muscles beneath its fur bulge unnaturally. Its eyes turn a deeper shade of crimson, and its fangs double in length. The beast's entire frame grows significantly larger before our eyes. It seems this creature can enter a berserk state as well. The alpha's speed becomes a blur. Before he can even react, it is already upon him. Its sharp claws aim straight for his throat. He twists his head desperately, but the claws still tear 3 bloody gashes into his neck. He recoils in pain, but the alpha gives him no room to breathe, launching another immediate assault. And who could blame it for being so relentless? This time, the alpha sinks its fangs into his front leg, piercing through the reinforced armor and deep into the flesh. He shakes his leg violently, but the alpha refuses to let go, locking its jaws tight and tearing at the wound with all its might, determined to rip the limb clean off. The alpha is determined to tear his leg off. The agony is so intense he can barely stand, and he can hear his own bones grinding under the pressure. He tells himself he must find a way to break free. He suddenly raises his other front leg and slams it down onto the alpha's head once, twice, and then a third time. The alpha finally releases its grip and staggers back. Seizing the moment, he lowers his head to use his remaining weapons. He drives the bone spikes on his back toward the alpha. The wolf king tries to dodge, but the previous heavy blows have made him half a beat too slow. The spikes sink deep into the alpha's shoulder. With a final, desperate surge of strength, he lunges forward until a sickening crack echoes through the air. The alpha's shoulder blade is completely pierced. It lets out a shrill, agonizing scream, struggling frantically to escape the lethal impalement. In a final act of defiance, the alpha snaps its jaws around his neck. It seems the beast is intent on taking him down with it, as fangs puncture the armor. The teeth sink into his veins, and warm blood begins to spray out. He can feel his consciousness blurring as his body grows heavier by the second. But he refuses to die here. Gritting his teeth, he musters every ounce of power to toss the alpha upward with his horns. The alpha is sent flying, tracing an arc through the air before crashing heavily into the jagged rocks at the bottom of the canyon. He staggers back, nearly falling over the edge himself. He collapses onto the ground, gasping for air while the wound on his neck continues to bleed out. Then, the system's chime rings out. It confirms the kill of the mutated alpha wolf and awards him 500 high-energy points. He has gained the skills Bloodthirsty Berserk and Haste. His weight has now surpassed 2,000 pounds, and his strength has broken past 150. With agility exceeding 80, a deep purification begins. The system urges him to replenish his energy immediately, and so he struggles to move. He limps painfully to the edge of the canyon. The alpha's corpse lies below. Though it is a mangled mess of flesh and bone, it is still a feast. He carefully climbs down the canyon walls to reach the fallen king. Even in death, the beast is massive, likely weighing several hundred pounds. Without a moment's hesitation, he begins to devour the warm meat. As the flesh enters his mouth, that familiar burning sensation surges through him once more. The wound on his neck begins to knit back together, and his broken bone spikes start to regrow. It is a gruesome but necessary transformation. He eats with a primal frenzy, quickly consuming more than half of the alpha's body. The system chimes again to signal the completion of the feast. His weight has reached 2,200 pounds, and his stats have soared. His armor has now evolved into a heavy, defensive plating. His defense power increases by 200%, and his bone spikes evolve into sharp blades with 300% more piercing power. We see him filled with a sudden surge of strength, the previous weakness vanishing entirely. He looks up to find a dozen wolves standing at the top of the canyon. They watch him with eyes full of awe and terror. He lets out a low, guttural howl, and the pack immediately drops to the ground, shivering in fear. From this day forward, these mountains are his domain. After finishing his meal of the Wolf King, he leads the submissive pack back into the heart of the forest. Over the next few days, he hunts the surrounding beasts with a frenzy, stabilizing his weight at 20 to 100 pounds. Every animal in the forest senses his presence and flees at the mere scent of him. He assumes he can continue his evolution in peace, but humans, as it turns out, have found him again. While drinking water in the west, he suddenly hears the distant roar of helicopter blades. He raises his head warily and spots 3 helicopters flying directly toward his position. He immediately turns to run into the dense forest, but the helicopters are far faster and catch up to him in no time at all. A massive metal net drops from the sky. He has no time to dodge and is caught squarely beneath it. The metal net is electrified, and a powerful current surges through his body. He twitches in agony as his 4 legs give way, and he crashes heavily to the ground. The helicopters land, and 7 or 8 fully armed men jump out. Their leader is a burly, bald man who looks like a seasoned professional. With a stun baton and a tranquilizer gun at his waist, the captain eyes him. This is the mutated bull that Lao Dao mentioned. A young team member approaches, his eyes wide with shock. The bald captain nods and pulls out a walkie-talkie to report the success. He tells a certain Dr. Su that the target has been captured and asks for instructions. A woman's excited voice crackles over the radio. She orders them to transport the creature to the research institute immediately so she can personally study its mutated genes. His heart sinks. A research institute. These people specialize in capturing mutated creatures. The bald captain waves his hand, and several members step forward. They aim their tranquilizer guns and fire a rapid volley. The needles pierce his skin, and the potent drugs begin to take hold of him. His consciousness begins to blur. He struggles desperately, but he cannot break free from the metal net as his body grows heavier and heavier. Just as he is about to lose consciousness, the system's chime suddenly rings out, detecting that a massive amount of anesthetic has been injected. The system warns that the anesthetic is being processed, and it will take 3 hours to fully wake. It suggests he fake unconsciousness to find an escape opportunity. He immediately stops struggling and closes his eyes, pretending to pass out. The bald captain walks over and uses a stun baton to poke him. Once he's satisfied the beast is out cold, he sighs in relief and orders his men to load him into the transport cage quickly. Several team members work together to lift him into a massive titanium alloy cage, which is then hoisted by cables beneath a helicopter. The helicopter takes off, and peering through the slits of his eyes, he watches the forest recede into the distance. They fly for over an hour before the helicopter finally lands. We see him being transported into a vast underground base, surrounded by researchers in white lab coats. A woman in her 30s approaches. This is Dr. Su, the voice from the radio. She wears gold-rimmed glasses, and her eyes shine with a fanatical light. She calls him the most perfect mutation specimen she has ever seen. Dr. Su circles the cage, scribbling notes in her book. She orders the captain to move him to Lab 3 to prepare for gene sampling. The bald captain nods and directs his men to push the cage into an even larger room. This room, as we see, is filled with various instruments and equipment, with a massive metal operating table in the center. His heart begins to race. These people clearly intend to dissect him. Dr. Su walks to the side of the cage and pulls out a syringe filled with the green liquid. She explains she must first inject a gene stabilizer to prevent a rampage during the experiment. She reaches out to open the cage, but at that exact moment, he snaps his eyes open. The system has metabolized most of the anesthetic, and he can finally move. With a furious roar, he slams his body against the cage door. The titanium alloy is strong, but it cannot withstand 2,200 pounds of weight and his massive strength. With a loud crack, the cage door is deformed by the impact. Dr. Su is terrified, stumbling back several steps as she screams that he's awake and demands they use the electricity. The bald captain reacts instantly, raising his stun baton and charging forward. However, he has already burst from the cage, and with one hoof, he kicks the man into a wall, knocking him unconscious. The other team members pull out their tranquilizer guns and fire a rapid volley. The needles hit his heavy armor and are all deflected. He charges toward the nearest team member, tossing him into the air with his horns as the lab descends into chaos. The laboratory descends into absolute chaos as researchers scatter in every direction. Dr. Su hides behind a large instrument, trembling as she reaches for the wall. She slams her hand onto a red button, triggering a piercing alarm as the laboratory doors seal automatically. Suddenly, from the ceiling above, over a dozen high-voltage electric nets drop down, trapping him in the center. The moment the power surges, a violent current tears through his entire body. He twitches in agony from the shock, yet he grinds his teeth and refuses to collapse. Watching this, a flicker of madness dances in Dr. Su's eyes. She exclaims that his electrical resistance is even higher than expected, making such a specimen truly priceless. To her, he is more treasure than living being. She walks to a nearby cabinet and pulls out several syringes filled with a mysterious blue liquid. Since ordinary anesthetics failed, she decides on a new approach. She prepares a high-concentration gene-strengthening sedative, claiming it is powerful enough to force any biological creature into a deep slumber. She then raises the syringe and begins walking toward him, step by step. He struggles desperately, but the electric nets hold him so tightly he can barely move. Just as the needle is about to pierce his skin, he suddenly activates his berserk vision. At the moment the skill triggers, we see his state shift entirely. His blood begins to boil, his eyes turn a deep, blood-red hue, and his muscles swell with terrifying power. His strength stat explodes to 300 points. He lets out a roar that shakes the very foundations of the base and violently snaps the high-voltage nets. As the wires break, sparks fly everywhere, causing the lights in the entire lab to flicker and dim. Dr. Su's hand shakes with terror, and the syringe slips, shattering against the floor. The blue liquid spills across the tiles as he charges the nearest instrument. He uses his massive horns to smash the priceless equipment into pieces. Before his overwhelming strength, these machines are like paper, reduced to scrap metal in an instant. Dr. Su screams for someone to stop him, pleading for the safety of her equipment, but the remaining team members are too terrified to even step close. He continues his path of destruction, shattering cabinets, instruments, and the operating table until the room is a graveyard of technology. It is in this moment of ruin that he spots a massive freezer in the corner, filled with vials of various colors. He charges forward and smashes the heavy door with his head. Dozens of vials, red, blue, green, and purple, tumble out onto the floor. When Dr. Su sees this, her face turns a deathly shade of pale. She screams that those are high-concentration gene serums and that he must not be allowed to consume them. However, as we see, she is far too late. He lowers his head, picks up a purple vial, and bites through the glass tube, swallowing the potent contents in a single gulp. The moment the liquid enters his throat, a searing heat surges straight to his brain. By consuming the high-concentration gene-strengthening serum, he gains 800 high-energy points, while his constitution jumps by 50 and his strength explodes by another 60 points. With his agility also rising by 40, he feels a terrifying power coursing through him, an effect far more potent than even the lion-headed Wolf King. Without a moment's hesitation, he continues his feast, grabbing red, blue, and green vials and shoving them all into his mouth. Dr. Su finally breaks down completely. She drops to her knees, her eyes filled with a hollow, soul-crushing despair. To her, everything is ruined. Those serums were worth hundreds of millions, and the lab is now bankrupt. He, however, pays her no mind. He continues his frantic consumption until the process is complete. His weight has reached 2,500 pounds, with strength at 280, constitution at 220, and agility at 150. But then, a warning. His body is overloaded and must enter a transformative slumber. His eyelids grow heavy, and his body begins to slip from his control. He realizes too late that the serums are taking a different kind of toll. He staggers, trying to charge out of the laboratory, but finds his legs have turned to lead. With a heavy thud, he collapses onto the floor as his consciousness begins to fade. Seeing this, a flicker of hope reignites in Dr. Su's eyes. She screams for them to inject anesthetics and secure him while he's unconscious. The bald captain crawls up from the floor, clutching his chest as he approaches. Several team members aim their tranquilizer guns and fire a relentless volley at the fallen beast. And yet, the needles can't even pierce his skin. Under the serum's influence, his heavy armor has hardened into something far more resilient, shimmering with a cold, metallic luster. The captain grinds his teeth and pulls out his radio, ordering a transport vehicle to arrive immediately. They must move him while he sleeps. 10 minutes later, a massive transport truck rolls into the lab, carrying a very specific cargo. Inside is a specialized titanium alloy cage surrounded by high-voltage generators. The team works together to heave him into the enclosure, securing his forelegs with reinforced shackles. Dr. Su walks over and reaches out to touch his heavy armor, her eyes full of fanaticism. She whispers that he is perfect, that this armor's hardness surpasses any known metal. To her, he is the key to a new era of technology. She turns to the captain and gives the order to transport him to the underground facility. The next phase of her plan is about to begin. She orders him taken to the special lab 3 floors down, where the most advanced dissection equipment awaits. She intends to study him personally. As the transport vehicle starts, we see him being moved deeper underground. The surroundings grow darker, and the air fills with the pungent scent of disinfectant. Deep down, he can feel his body undergoing a violent transformation. His bones are restructuring, his muscles are growing, and his armor is evolving. The system's notification pings continue to echo in his mind. The metamorphosis progress reaches 10%, then climbs steadily higher. It hits 30%, then 50%. The ultimate metamorphosis is expected to be complete in 3 hours, evolving him into an abyss magic bull. Once the transformation is finished, the host will gain destruction-level power. The system suggests an immediate escape as the transport truck finally stops. We see him pushed into a massive laboratory, 10 times larger than the previous one. It is filled with all sorts of terrifying instruments and equipment. In the center sits a giant metal surgical table, covered in sharp blades and electric saws. A perfectly ordinary Tuesday for a mad scientist, it seems. Dr. Su walks in, followed by a dozen researchers. She looks at him lying in the cage, a look of pure excitement dancing across her face. She orders the dissection to begin, eager to see what makes his internal structure so special. To her, he is nothing more than a fascinating puzzle. The researchers begin preparing their tools. Electric saws, scalpels, and samplers are all laid out systematically on the surgical table. The bald captain walks over, though he seems to have a few lingering concerns about the situation. Dr. Sue reassures him that the sedatives in his system are enough to keep him asleep for 3 days and nights. A bit of an overstatement, perhaps. Furthermore, she notes this cage is made of the strongest titanium alloy. Even a tank couldn't break out. The captain knocks on the bars to be sure. Even if he were to wake up, they are 3 floors underground with 30 fully armed security personnel. He has nowhere to run. However, what they don't realize is that his consciousness has remained awake this entire time. The system is actually helping him accelerate the change. If he can just hold on for 2 more hours, the evolution will be complete. At that point, a mere titanium alloy cage won't be able to hold him. He keeps his eyes closed, lying in the cage and feigning unconsciousness. Meanwhile, the system's notifications continue to chime in his mind. The metamorphosis progress hits 70%, then 80%. He can feel every single bone in his body being meticulously rebuilt. His muscle density is increasing at a frantic pace. Dr. Sue walks toward the cage, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Standing by the cage, a researcher pulls out a tablet to scan him, only to find something strange. His body temperature is rising rapidly. His heart rate is also accelerating, which is hardly the state of someone in a coma. Frowning, the researcher turns to the bald captain. He suggests injecting another dose of sedative just to be safe. The captain nods and picks up a massive syringe as he approaches. Just as he prepares to open the cage, the system's notification suddenly rings out. The metamorphosis has reached 100%. The evolution is complete. His current form is now that of an abyss magic bull, weighing in at a staggering 3,000 pounds. With a strength of 400, constitution of 350, and agility of 200, he has become a true force of nature. New skills are unlocked: destructive collision, hellish trample, and dreadful roar. Suddenly, he snaps his eyes wide open. His eyes flash with a crimson light. The sight is so terrifying that the captain's hand shakes, dropping the syringe onto the floor. He lets out a furious roar, sending out sound waves that ripple like solid stone. The entire laboratory begins to tremble violently. As the dreadful roar activates, every living being within range falls into a state of pure terror. Dr. Sue and her staff collapse to the ground. Their eyes are filled with absolute dread. Even the captain, a seasoned security professional, turns pale as his legs turn to jelly. He stands up abruptly, and the specialized shackles snap instantly as if they were made of paper. With a surge of power, he lunges forward. He slams into the titanium alloy cage, creating a piercing screech of twisting metal as the iron bars begin to deform and crack. Dr. Sue completely breaks down at the sight. She screams that it's impossible, believing the titanium alloy should have held him. However, reality delivers a harsh lesson. He exerts his strength once more, and the cage can no longer withstand the pressure. The structure shatters completely, sending shards flying everywhere. He steps out from the ruins, radiating a terrifying, oppressive pressure. We see that his body is now significantly larger. His heavy armor has turned a deep black, shimmering with a dark, eerie luster. The bone spikes on his back have evolved into blade-like weapons, each 2 feet long and incredibly sharp. To be honest, they look lethal. His horns have grown thicker and sturdier, their tips gleaming with a cold light that looks capable of piercing through anything. The captain struggles to his feet and tremblingly pulls out his radio, ordering all security personnel to the 3rd floor lab immediately. The target has gone berserk. As the warning repeats, the laboratory doors are kicked open by 30 heavily armed security personnel. They rush in wielding submachine guns and rocket launchers, led by a scarred, middle-aged man who serves as the security team leader. A flash of shock crosses his face when he sees our protagonist, but he quickly regains his composure and orders everyone to fire at will. The goal is to kill the target. Immediately, a dense hail of bullets rains down, striking his heavy armor with a relentless rhythm. However, the bullets only produce a shower of sparks. His defense has increased so much after evolving that ordinary rounds simply can't penetrate it. He charges toward the nearest guards and activates destructive collision. The system confirms that all obstacles in his path will be utterly destroyed. He moves like an out-of-control tank, leaving chaos in his wake. To be honest, it's less of a fight and more of a demolition. Several guards are sent flying, slamming into the walls and losing consciousness instantly. The scarred captain's expression shifts from confidence to pure alarm. He immediately orders the use of rocket launchers. 2 guards shoulder their weapons and aim directly at him, firing 2 rounds in quick succession. The rockets whistle through the air, trailing fire, yet he doesn't even bother to dodge. 2 massive explosions follow, and flames engulf his entire form. Watching this, Dr. Sue feels a flicker of hope, wondering if he's finally been killed. But a second later, he simply walks out of the fire. There isn't a single scratch on him. It seems his heavy armor is now strong enough to withstand direct hits from rockets without breaking a sweat. The captain completely loses his nerve, having never seen such a terrifying creature. He screams for a retreat, desperate to get his men out. But it's already too late. He activates Hellish Trample, raising his front hooves high before slamming them down onto the laboratory floor. With a deafening boom, the entire lab shakes violently as cracks spiderweb across the ground. A massive shockwave ripples outward from the impact. Over a dozen guards are knocked off their feet. Taking advantage of the chaos, he lunges forward, using his horns to toss one into the air. He crushes another under his hooves and pierces a third with his bone spikes. In just a few minutes, more than half the team is down. The remaining men break completely, throwing down their weapons and fleeing for their lives. Even the captain abandons his post, sprinting for the exit. Naturally, he has no intention of letting anyone escape. With a quick burst of speed, he intercepts the captain right at the doorway. The captain looks up at the towering beast and closes his eyes in despair. He is gored by the horns and slammed ruthlessly against the wall. The captain loses consciousness on the spot, leaving only Dr. Su and a few terrified researchers remaining in the laboratory. Dr. Su watches him, tears streaming down his face as he begs for mercy, promising never to do it again. Our protagonist simply stares back. After a few seconds, he turns away and heads deeper into the lab. Killing him now would be too easy. It's far better to let him live. Watching his life's work crumble into ruins is the ultimate punishment. He begins a path of destruction, tearing through every piece of equipment. Instruments and devices are smashed to pieces, and those precious experimental samples are crushed under his heavy hooves. Just then, he notices something. In the corner stands a massive glass cabinet housing various mutated creatures, snakes, rats, and even a giant black bear. With a single powerful strike, he shatters the glass, freeing the captives from their long imprisonment. The smaller mutations immediately scatter and flee in a frenzy, yet the mutated black bear doesn't run away at all. Instead, it lowers its head in a clear sign of submission. He watches the beast, a flicker of surprise crossing his mind at its intelligence. The black bear remains prostrate on the ground, its eyes filled with awe. He takes a moment to size up this massive creature. It must weigh at least half a ton, with muscles so tight they look ready to burst. Clearly, the lab has pumped it full of chemicals. He lets out a low growl, and the bear instantly stands to follow him. Since it's willing to serve, he decides it might be useful later. We see him turn toward the depths of the facility, where many rooms remain unexplored. With the bear in tow, he continues his rampage. He smashes through door after door until he finally reaches the innermost chamber. A sign on the door reads, Core Energy Vault. The warning, authorized personnel only, doesn't stop him from kicking the door open. The sight inside is truly staggering. The entire room is filled with massive cultivation tanks, each containing energy crystals of various shimmering colors. These crystals radiate energy waves far more potent than any medicine he has consumed. Suddenly, the system's voice chimes in. It detects a high-purity energy source and suggests he consume it immediately to break past his current limits and reach a higher level. Without a moment's hesitation, he charges forward and shatters the first tank with his horns, sending blue crystals rolling across the floor. He swallows one whole, and it melts instantly, sending a terrifying surge of raw power exploding through his entire body. A massive surge erupts as the system chimes, noting he has consumed high-purity energy crystals and gained 2,000 high-energy points and 80 points of strength. His constitution rises by 100 points and agility by 60. He can feel every cell in his body cheering from the sensation. To be honest, this feels better than anything he has ever eaten, and he begins frantically smashing the other cultivation tanks, red, green, and purple. He swallows the gold ones too, and the system notifications ring out frantically as his weight reaches 3,500 pounds. His strength hits 580, constitution 550, and agility 320 as the system detects an energy overload. His body begins a second evolution. His heavy armor starts to crack, and new plating begins to grow out from the fissures. The color is deeper and the hardness far greater, while the bone spikes on his back grow from 2 feet to 3 feet long. Each spike shimmers with a dark red light, and his horns become truly exaggerated, growing 5 feet long and as thick as a man's thigh. The tips are terrifyingly sharp, but just then, the laboratory alarms blare as Dr. Su's voice crackles over the intercom. With a tone of hysterical madness, the doctor activates the self-destruct sequence. If he cannot keep the creature, he will destroy it. He intends for them to perish together, and the entire institute begins to shake as red lights on the walls flash frantically. The countdown has begun, and in 10 minutes, this place will be reduced to ruins, a realization that weighs heavily on his mind. He must escape immediately, turning to charge out with the black bear following close behind, yet they find the exit blocked. The captain stands there with the remaining security personnel, armed with heavy machine guns, and several men carrying flamethrowers. The captain's face is grim and full of resolve as he repeats Dr. Su's orders. Even if they die, they must hold him here. They intend to bury him in this facility, and as the words leave his mouth, everyone opens fire, pouring out a rain of bullets. The flamethrowers spew scorching heat, and with a furious roar, he activates his fear howl, but this time, things are different. The security team was clearly prepared, wearing special earplugs that greatly reduced the fear effect, leaving him with only one choice. He has to force his way through, charging into the bullets and flames. Though the rounds can't pierce his armor, the impact is immense. The sheer force slows his momentum, and the flames make his skin burn hot. It isn't fatal, but it certainly makes things difficult. We see him activate his ruinous charge, slamming into the crowd like a heavy tank and sending several security guards flying. They crash against the walls, their fates uncertain, yet Captain Eightface doesn't retreat. Instead, he drops his machine gun and pulls out a remote. With a shout of defiance, he presses the button, causing a dozen massive iron cages to drop from the ceiling and trap our protagonist. The cages are instantly electrified, sending a powerful current through his body, though this time, things are quite different. His constitution has reached 550 points, meaning a simple current can't stop him. He lets out a roar and exerts his massive strength. He forces the iron bars apart with his bare hands, a sight that leaves Captain Eightface's eyes filled with pure, cold despair. Calling him a monster, the captain watches as he rushes forward, kicking the remote away, though, surprisingly, he chooses to spare the man's life. With only 5 minutes left on the countdown, he must leave. He leads the Black Bear out of the lab and begins a frantic sprint through the halls. The Institute's layout is as complex as a labyrinth, filled with forks and dead ends, forcing him to smash through door after door. Finally, he spots the elevator leading to the surface, but it has already been shut down, leaving the stairs as his only option. He charges into the stairwell, climbing upward on all fours with the Black Bear following close behind, huffing and puffing from the effort. With only 3 minutes remaining, he accelerates and finally reaches the first floor, only to find the exit sealed by a massive alloy door. Without a second thought, he launches another ruinous charge. With a deafening boom, he smashes a gaping hole right through the metal. He crawls out into the wilderness, surrounded by dense woods. As the countdown hits its final minute, he begins to run for his life. The Black Bear gallops beside him as the seconds tick away. 30, 20, 10, and then the world erupts. An earth-shattering explosion reduces the entire institute to ruins, sending a shockwave outward like a literal tsunami of fire and debris. He is thrown through the air and slams heavily into the ground, while the Black Bear is tossed against a tree, knocked unconscious by the blast. The site has become a sea of fire and billowing smoke, obscuring everything. It seems Dr. Sue and Captain Eightface have met their end. The security team is likely buried in the rubble as well. He lies there, gasping for breath and covered in wounds from the escape. Yet, his eyes shine with an excited light. He has survived, he is stronger, and now, the system's voice chimes in his ear once more. A chime rings out as he successfully escapes the Institute, earning the Jedi Survival achievement while his weight reaches a staggering 3,500 pounds. His strength is now 580, constitution 550, and agility 320. He has finally reached the peak state of an Abyss Demon Bull. The system suggests he find even stronger opponents to break his limits. He looks toward the distant, rolling mountains, a glimmer of anticipation in his eyes. Human weapons can no longer harm him, and he decides it is time to explore the depths of the wilderness, bringing the unconscious Black Bear along. Limping slightly, he disappears into the dense forest. His wounds are still bleeding, but the system is already working to heal him as he moves. After about half an hour, the Black Bear finally wakes up and looks at him with eyes full of gratitude, clearly realizing who saved his life. He lets out a low growl, signaling the bear to follow, and continues forward until the system's notification suddenly pings again. It detects a large gathering of high-energy creatures 3 kilometers ahead and suggests he go on the hunt. His eyes light up as he quickens his pace. As he moves forward, the scent of blood in the air grows thicker until, finally, we see him arrive at a wide, open clearing. The sight before him is truly shocking. The ground is littered with animal carcasses, deer, wild boars, wolves, and even a few bears. Standing in the center of this mountain of corpses are 7 or 8 massive mutated creatures, looking quite formidable indeed. Leading them is a mutated tiger 3 times the size of a normal one, its muscles bulging and its eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Beside it stand 2 mutated leopards, a mutated boar, and several wolves. These beasts have clearly formed a pack to dominate this hunting ground. The mutated tiger spots him, and a flash of wariness crosses its eyes. It lets out a low roar, signaling the others to surround him. Our protagonist simply flicks his tail, showing no fear whatsoever as the pack moves into a coordinated encircling formation. These beasts are powerful, certainly, but compared to him, they are still outmatched. The mutated tiger is the first to launch an attack. It moves with the speed of a lightning bolt, lunging for his throat, but he steps aside and thrusts his horns toward its soft underbelly. The tiger twists in midair, narrowly avoiding a fatal blow, though its ribs are still sliced open by the sharp tip of his horn. It retreats immediately upon landing, its eyes filled with newfound dread, just as the 2 mutated leopards seize the chance to strike from the side. Their sharp claws aim directly for his eyes, but he spins around, meeting them with the jagged bone spikes protruding from his back. The first leopard is skewered instantly by his bone spikes and dies on the spot, while the other retreats in terror, not daring to approach again. The mutated boar charges from behind, aiming its tusks at his hind legs, but he simply raises a hoof and delivers a brutal kick to its head. With a dull thud, the boar's skull shatters and it collapses instantly. In just a few short seconds, the momentum of the fight has shifted entirely. He has already dispatched 2 mutated creatures, leaving the remaining wolves trembling with fear and far too terrified to step forward. A flash of pure rage crosses the mutated tiger's eyes. It lets out a deafening roar as its body begins to swell and expand. It seems this beast is capable of entering a berserk state, growing even larger as its strength and speed surge to terrifying new heights. It lunges at him once more, moving so fast he can barely track it, its sharp claws scraping against his natural armor. The impact is heavy, but our protagonist remains unmoved, his hide proving far tougher than the tiger anticipated. He braces himself against the onslaught, waiting for the perfect opening to end this struggle once and for all. He thrusts his horns deep into the tiger's chest. The massive predator lets out a shrill, agonizing cry. The tiger struggles desperately to break free, but he continues to drive forward, pinning the beast with his overwhelming weight. Seizing the moment of the tiger's weakness, he prepares his final, decisive strike. He lunges forward again, burying his horns into the tiger's chest as the beast screams in pain, struggling in a futile attempt to escape. It cannot push past his horns, and with a powerful toss of his head, he slams the tiger into the ground, where it twitches a few times. The tiger falls silent forever, seeing their leader dead. The remaining wolves turn and flee into the brush as fast as they can. However, he has no intention of letting them escape. Activating his rapid speed, he catches them in the span of a few breaths. All the wolves are struck down, and soon he stands panting amidst a mountain of corpses, covered in blood as the black bear watches in awe. He begins to devour the carcasses of these mutated creatures, and as the warm flesh is consumed, that familiar burning sensation returns. The system chimes, devour complete. His weight has reached 4,200 pounds, with strength at 650 and constitution at 600. His agility is now 380, and the system detects that he has finally reached the absolute peak of the Abyss Demon Bull form. The system informs him that he can no longer evolve. It suggests he find a legendary creature to devour to break his racial limits. A legendary creature? He wonders what that could be, but the system offers no verbal answer, only a vivid image in his mind. We see a vision of a deeper, darker wilderness, filled with towering ancient trees and a thick, suffocating mist. Deep within that fog, several massive figures loom, radiating a terrifying pressure that would make any lesser creature tremble. A flash of excitement crosses his eyes as he realizes the true challenge is only just beginning. But then, a distant roar interrupts his thoughts. He looks up to see the approach of 3 armed helicopters, each bearing the distinct insignia of the Research Institute. It seems Dr. Sue survived the chaos after all, and he's brought reinforcements. A frantic voice begins blaring from the lead chopper speakers. Dr. Sue sounds hysterical as he screams, "You beast! You destroyed my lab and killed my people. Today, I'll make you pay." The machine guns open fire immediately, sending a rain of heavy bullets down that tears into the earth and kicks up clouds of dust. He quickly ducks behind a massive tree, the black bear following his lead, but the helicopter's firepower is simply too relentless. The tree is shredded in seconds. He realizes he must find a way to strike back, or they will eventually be worn down and killed. Spotting a massive boulder nearby, he charges out from cover, braving the hail of bullets to reach his makeshift weapon. The rounds strike his natural armor, and while they can't pierce his hide, the sheer kinetic force is enough to slow his momentum. Gritting his teeth, he reaches the rock and braces his powerful horns against the stone, channeling every ounce of his monstrous strength. He heaves the multi-ton boulder upward, aiming carefully at the nearest helicopter before launching it with a violent burst of power. The massive rock flies through the air like a primitive cannonball, moving with a speed that catches the pilot completely off guard. With a deafening crash, the stone smashes into the fuselage, and the helicopter erupts into a brilliant, jagged fireball in midair. As the flaming wreckage falls, the other 2 pilots panic, immediately pulling up to a safer altitude, terrified to stay within his range. Dr. Sue's voice crackles over the radio again, now thick with a mixture of pure terror and blind rage. "Use the missiles. Blow him to hell." Both helicopters fire simultaneously, and 4 missiles streak through the sky, trailing plumes of fire as they scream toward our protagonist. The missiles lock onto his position, and we see him activate his rapid speed to dive out of the way just as 4 massive explosions rock the earth. The blinding light of the blast swallows the spot where he stood, turning everything within dozens of meters into a smoldering wasteland of ruins. He huddles behind a massive rock, covered in dust but miraculously unhurt. However, the helicopters aren't finished and prepare another volley. For more missiles scream toward him, and he realizes that simply hiding isn't a solution. He must find a way to bring them down. Glancing at the black bear, a plan forms in his mind, and he lets out a low growl signaling the beast to climb onto his back. The bear doesn't quite understand the goal, but it obeys, and together they charge out of cover toward the nearest towering ancient tree. The helicopter's machine guns immediately track them, sparks flying as bullets deflect off his hide, but he ignores the pain and reaches the trunk. He unleashes a devastating hell arrow strike at the base, causing a thunderous boom as the massive tree shudders and its roots begin to snap. Bracing his horns against the wood, he heaves with all his might until the remaining roots crack and the giant timber begins to tilt. The tree falls directly toward one of the hovering helicopters, and though the pilot realizes the danger, it is already far too late to react. The massive trunk slams into the aircraft, the branches instantly snagging the rotors and snapping them like toothpicks. The helicopter spirals out of control and hits the ground with a deafening roar, erupting into a pillar of fire that reaches for the sky. Dr. Su is clearly terrified now, his voice trembling over the speakers as he screams for a retreat, convinced this beast is immortal. The final helicopter veers away in a desperate attempt to escape, but our protagonist has no intention of letting them leave so easily. Carrying the black bear, he rushes toward another ancient tree to repeat the tactic, slamming into it to bring the giant crashing down. The tree falls toward the retreating chopper, but this time the pilot is faster and manages to swerve out of the way of the falling timber. His heart sinks as it looks like they might escape, but suddenly, the black bear leaps from his back and catches a high branch in midair. Using the momentum, the bear launches itself onto the helicopter's landing gear, its half-ton weight instantly sending the aircraft into a wild tilt. The pilot struggles frantically to stabilize the craft, but the bear has already climbed to the cabin and is smashing the glass with its heavy paws. The windshield shatters, and the bear's claws find the pilot's face, ending the flight in a final, desperate scream of agony. With a final cry, the pilot's grip fails, and the helicopter spirals out of control before slamming into the earth with a deafening explosion. As flames leap toward the sky once more, we see the black bear leap clear just before impact. He takes a rough tumble, but he's largely unharmed. Our protagonist walks over and gives him a nudge with his nose as a sign of praise. The beast may not be the strongest, but he's certainly clever. A notification chimes. Destroying the gunship has earned him 500 high energy points for successfully repelling the human-armed pursuit. He has also unlocked a new achievement, Enemy of Humanity. Looking at the wreckage of the 3 helicopters, a cold glint flashes in his eyes. Human weapons are formidable, to be sure, but they still pale in the face of absolute, overwhelming power. Suddenly, a massive armored vehicle rumbles toward them, its roof mounted with a giant autocannon whose dark barrel is aimed right at him. The door swings open and Captain Eight Faces steps out, his body wrapped in bandages, a clear sign he barely survived the previous explosion. Despite his heavy injuries, he has returned, his eyes burning with pure hatred as he curses the beast before him. He vows to avenge his fallen brothers today, and with a grimace, he presses a remote control to trigger the armored vehicle's weapon. The autocannon erupts instantly, raining shells down like a hailstorm, each one carrying enough explosive force to shatter the earth. He tries his best to dodge, but the coverage is simply too wide to escape completely. A shell detonates right beside him. The massive shockwave sends him flying through the air, and he hits the ground hard, noticing several cracks appearing in his armor. This vehicle's firepower is even more relentless than the helicopters, but as he struggles to his feet, a look of fierce determination takes hold. Since he cannot hide, he decides to meet the threat head-on, activating his bloodthirsty berserk skill as his eyes turn a deep, crimson red. His power surges to a staggering 900 points, and with a thunderous roar, he launches a devastating collision directly at the armored car. Captain Eight Faces pales as he sees the beast charging and frantically orders his men to increase their fire, the cannon shells pouring out like a monsoon. He pushes through the barrage, the cracks in his armor widening as blood begins to seep through the gaps, yet he does not slow down. Instead, his speed only increases as the distance closes, 100 meters, 50, 30, until Captain Eight Faces finally begins to panic. The captain turns to flee back inside the safety of the armor, but it is already far too late. Our protagonist slams into the vehicle with terrifying force. The impact is absolutely terrifying, a collision of raw nature against cold steel. The force of the strike ripples through the air, leaving no doubt about who truly owns this moment. Our protagonist walks over and looks down at the captain, whose eyes are now overflowing with pure terror and despair. The man stammers that he is a monster, but the beast simply raises a heavy hoof and crushes the armored vehicle. Crunching metal fills the air. The vehicle is pulverized under his weight, and suddenly, the internal ammunition begins to cook off, leading to a massive secondary explosion. The armored car is reduced to scrap metal, and Captain Eight Faces is sent flying by the shockwave, his fate left entirely to chance. Standing amidst the ruins, he pants heavily, covered in wounds, yet a light of pure excitement shines in his eyes. It seems human weaponry can no longer hold him back, a fact confirmed by the system chime announcing his victory over the heavy armor. He has earned 800 high energy points, bringing his weight to 4,500 pounds, with his strength and constitution reaching terrifying new heights. The system informs him he is now the strongest being in this region and suggests he head deeper into the wilderness to find legendary creatures. We see him look toward the distant, mist-shrouded mountains, where he can sense a truly formidable pressure waiting for him. Deciding it is time to move on, he leads the black bear away from the battlefield and begins the long trek into the deep wild. With the system's help, his wounds close rapidly and the cracks in his armor vanish as they travel for nearly 3 hours. The environment grows increasingly desolate, the trees thinning out, until he suddenly stops in his tracks. Up ahead, a familiar place appears, the cattle farm belonging to Zhuang Han, and after a moment's hesitation, he decides to investigate. The farm is in ruins now, overgrown with weeds and completely devoid of livestock. It is a ghost of its former self. He walks to the very pen where he was once kept, finding the old hay still there, though it has long since turned moldy. Just then, the voice of a little girl drifts from the distance, calling out to her father about the enormous bull she sees. He turns to see Zhuang Han holding little Duo's hand at the entrance. The man freezes instantly, his body turning rigid. His face turns deathly pale as he recognizes the beast, yet Duo shows no fear, instead running toward him with pure excitement. The little girl exclaims how massive the bull is, even larger than Xiaohe, while Zhuang Han rushes forward, his soul nearly leaving his body in terror. He pulls Duo back, pleading with her not to go near, explaining that this is no ordinary bull, it is something far more dangerous. His voice trails off into a choked silence as he realizes the massive beast is staring directly at them. Shielding Duo behind his back, he begs with a trembling voice for the creature to spare his daughter and take his life instead. Our protagonist walks right up to them and lowers his massive head to look at Duo, who watches him with wide, innocent eyes. There is no fear in her gaze, only a curious wonder as she asks if he is Xiaohe and how he grew so large. She reaches out a tiny hand to touch his nose, causing Zhuang Han to pull her back instantly, terrified that the beast might strike. Looking at Duo, he remembers the image of her crying and begging her father not to kill him all those months ago. Though Zhuang Han eventually sold him, the girl's kindness was genuine, so he gently nuzzles her hand before turning to leave. Zhuang Han stands frozen, stunned that they were spared, and whispers a trembling question, asking if it really is Xiaohe. He doesn't look back, leading the black bear forward. Deep down, he decides to let the past remain in the past. He is no longer the helpless livestock he once was, and after leaving the farm, he begins to quicken his pace. Suddenly, the system chime rings out, detecting a powerful energy fluctuation 10 kilometers ahead from a legendary grade creature. His eyes light up with anticipation as he charges toward the source, the air growing heavier with pressure the closer he gets. The black bear begins to tremble, sensing the looming danger, so he signals for it to wait behind while he proceeds alone. Finally, we see him reach an open clearing where the ground is barren and scorched with black, jagged marks. The air is thick with the acrid scent of sulfur, and in the center of the clearing lies a truly massive creature. It is a terrifying giant python, at least 30 meters long and as thick as a water barrel, covered in pitch-black scales. Its head is as large as a small car, its eyes closed in a deep slumber as the system chime rings out once more. The system identifies the legendary creature as the Abyss Python, warning that its combat power is evaluated as extremely dangerous. The system advises our protagonist to proceed with extreme caution, as this creature possesses world-ending power. He stares at the giant python, his heart beginning to race. The pressure radiating from this beast is stronger than anything he has ever encountered. Yet, instead of retreating, a spark of excitement flashes in his eyes. Deep down, he knows that the only way to reach the next level of strength is to devour it. Suddenly, the python opens its eyes, crimson orbs filled with a cold, murderous intent, and fixes its gaze on him with a low, guttural hiss. In the next heartbeat, it lunges, opening its massive jaws to snap him whole. He reacts instantly, leaping aside just in time. The python's fangs slam into the earth, leaving 2 deep craters behind. Seizing the opening, he charges forward, aiming his horns at its massive body. However, his horns only leave a shallow scratch on the scales. It seems this beast's natural defense is even tougher than his own armor. To be honest, he hadn't expected it to be quite this durable. Suddenly, the python's massive tail whips around with terrifying speed. The blow sends him flying through the air, crashing hard against the scorched earth. He struggles to his feet and activates Bloodlust Berserk. His eyes turn a deep crimson as his strength surges to a staggering 1,000 points. With a thunderous roar, he charges the python once more, his speed and power reaching new heights. This time, he activates his Destruction Crash. He slams into the python's flank with the force of a mountain, causing the beast to reel as several cracks finally appear on its scales. But the Abyss Python is quick to retaliate, spitting a stream of black venom that sizzles through the air. Where it hits the ground, the earth is instantly dissolved into deep, smoking pits. He dodges desperately, but a few stray drops still splash onto his armor. A sharp, stinging pain radiates through his skin as the venom begins to eat through his protection. The power of this toxin is truly terrifying. The python seizes the moment to coil its massive body around him. As the coils tighten, we can hear his bones beginning to groan under the pressure. Breathing becomes nearly impossible. He realizes that if this continues, he will be crushed to death, so he struggles with every ounce of his remaining strength. He drives the bone spikes on his back deep into the python's flesh. The creature hisses in pain and instinctively loosens its grip just enough. Taking the chance, he breaks free from the deadly embrace, gasping for air as he regains his footing. He stomps the ground with a deafening boom, causing the earth to shake violently and throwing the python off balance as he prepares to strike again. He lunges forward, driving his horns with everything he has toward the python's vital spot. This time, the horns finally pierce those stubborn scales and sink deep. The beast lets out a piercing, agonized hiss, thrashing wildly in its death throes. Its massive tail whips around, catching him with a brutal blow. He is sent flying, smashing into a massive boulder that shatters upon impact. As he hits the ground, it feels as though every bone in his body is breaking. And yet, gritting his teeth against the pain, he forces himself back onto his feet. The wound he inflicted has clearly slowed the python down, but its counterattacks remain ferocious as it spits another stream of deadly venom. He dodges desperately, but the toxin splashes his hind leg, melting a hole through his armor. The searing pain nearly brings him to his knees. Refusing to yield, he charges the beast one more time, aiming his horns directly for its eyes. The python lets out a shrill cry of pain. With a violent jerk of its head, the python causes his strike to veer off course, only slicing the eyelid. Enraged, it opens its massive, bloody maw. With no time to dodge the incoming bite, he braces himself, meeting the attack with the sharp bone spikes on his back. They sink deep into the beast's throat. The creature recoils in agony, loosening its grip. Seizing the opening, he activates Destruction Crash and slams his weight into the python's skull. A sickening crack echoes as the python's skull fractures, its body beginning to twitch violently. He has no intention of giving it a moment to breathe. He charges again, driving his horns straight into the creature's throat. This time, the strike goes deep, finding its mark perfectly. Blood erupts like a fountain as the abyss python lets out one final, fading hiss. After a few last tremors, the massive body finally goes still. Tianheng has slain a legendary creature. For this feat, he earns 5,000 high-energy points as the system tallies his incredible growth. His weight surpasses 5,000 pounds, while his strength, constitution, and agility reach heights that were previously unthinkable. Having shattered his racial limits, the path to ultimate evolution finally opens. He collapses onto the ground, gasping for air and covered in wounds. He can barely stand, yet the system's prompt gives him the will to crawl toward the python's carcass. It is time to begin the feast. As he devours the flesh, an unprecedented surge of energy explodes within him. It feels as though every single cell in his body is cheering. The energy is absorbed with a frantic hunger. We see the progress bar climbing steadily, 10%, 30%, then 50% complete. His old armor begins to peel away, discarded like a shell, as a new and far more powerful layer begins to emerge from beneath his skin. The new growth emerges darker and harder than before, gleaming with a cold, metallic luster. Even the bone spikes along his spine begin to extend. They grow from 3 feet to 5, each one shimmering with a dark golden light. His horns, however, undergo an even more dramatic transformation. They stretch to a staggering 7 feet, thick as pillars and terrifyingly sharp, as if they could pierce the very heavens themselves. His physical size expands as well, his weight surging from 5,000 pounds to 6,000. His muscles ripple with explosive, raw power. The system confirms the devourer is complete. His current weight sits at 6,000 pounds, with strength at 1,000 and constitution at 900. The purification is finished. His current form is now the Wilderness Overlord, unlocking ultimate skills like Destruction Trample and Overlord's Pressure. He also gains an undying body. As he stands, he feels a surge of power so immense it feels as though he could tear the world apart. He lets out a triumphant roar that echoes like thunder across the entire wilderness. For dozens of miles in every direction, the message is clear. Every animal hears his cry and collapses to the ground, trembling in terror. The black bear runs over from a distance, but stops dead in his tracks. The bear's eyes are filled with awe and pure dread. He prostrates himself, not daring to look up until Tianheng lets out a low, reassuring growl. He signals for his companion to rise. Only then does the bear tremblingly stand and take his place behind him. Together, they look toward the distant mountains. That range marks the deepest part of the wilderness, the most dangerous place in legend. However, the bull we see now fears no challenge. With the bear following in his wake, he marches toward the heart of the wild. Wherever he passes, the beasts of the forest retreat in haste. No creature dares to approach him. Eventually, he climbs the highest peak in the wilderness, standing on the cliff's edge to overlook the world below. The distant cattle farm is no longer visible. It was once his cage, a place of slaughter, but that life is a distant memory now. Now, the entire wilderness is his domain. He roars at the sky once more, a sound so powerful it causes the very trees to shake. From the depths of the forest, countless beasts howl in return, as if answering the call of their new king. Wolves, bears, and tigers join the chorus. Even the strange, mutated creatures bow toward the mountain peak. They are submitting to the new order of the wild. He looks down at the thousands of beasts beneath him with a flicker of satisfaction. To be honest, his progress has been nothing short of miraculous. From a farm animal meant for the butcher to the overlord of the wilderness, it took less than 6 months. The shackles of humanity are finally broken. He has finally broken free. Human weapons are nothing more than toys to him now, and from this day forward, this wilderness belongs to him. The system's notification chime rings out one last time. It offers its congratulations, for the host has completed his ultimate evolution. He has become the overlord of the wilderness. A new journey is about to begin, and a much wider world is waiting for him to explore it. Out there, we find higher mountains, deeper forests, and even more powerful opponents just waiting to test his strength. Deep down, Tianheng knows this is only the beginning. He lets out one final roar that echoes across the entire wild, reaching every living creature. The mountains and forests tremble at his name. From today on, he is the supreme king of this land. No humans, no shackles, and no more restraints. There is only the endless wilderness and the never-ending path of evolution. He turns his gaze toward the distant horizon, looking far beyond the trees. Mist swirls in the distance, where he can just barely make out the silhouette of an even vaster world. Perhaps even stronger beings are waiting there. But he feels no fear. He is the wilderness overlord, the demonic bull who devours all things, and his true conquest has only just begun. With the black bear following faithfully behind him, they walk together into the heart of the wild, heading toward the unknown distance. Behind them, the cries of 10,000 beasts continue without pause, as if the entire forest is seeing its king off on his journey. He doesn't look back, not even once. Step by step, he marches toward a future where he will only grow stronger. And so, our story reaches a turning point. It is a transformation that few could have predicted back at that quiet cattle farm. Each step he takes marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of something far more legendary. If you enjoyed following this journey, please don't forget to like and subscribe to see where your support helps us bring more of these incredible stories to life. Feel free to share or leave a tip to support the Mingjing and Diandian column. We truly appreciate you watching along with us. This has been a presentation of Mingjing and the Diandian column. We will see you in the next adventure. The end. Presented by Mingjing and the Diandian column.